In a stunning blow to one of President Donald Trump's signature economic policies, a federal appeals court ruled on Friday that most of his sweeping tariffs on global imports are illegal, shaking up trade markets and raising questions about the future of U.S. commerce. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, in a 7-4 decision, declared that Trump overstepped his authority by using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to impose hefty levies on goods from dozens of countries, including close allies like Canada and Mexico. This landmark ruling, which builds on a May decision by the U.S. Court of International Trade, could unravel billions in duties collected since Trump rolled out his so-called Liberation Day tariffs in April, aiming to reshape global trade and boost American manufacturing. The court's decision centers on Trump's bold use of IEEPA, a 1977 law designed to address national emergencies, to justify tariffs as high as 50% on imports from nations like India, alongside 25% duties on Canadian and Mexican goods tied to fentanyl trafficking concerns. The judges, a mix of Democratic and Republican appointees, argued that the power to impose tariffs lies squarely with Congress, not the president, and that IEEPA doesn't grant the unbounded authority Trump claimed. The statute does not explicitly include the power to impose tariffs, duties, or the like, the majority wrote, emphasizing that Congress never intended to give the president a blank check to rewrite trade policy. For American businesses and consumers, the ruling carries massive implications. Small businesses, like New York's VOS Selections, a wine importer, and others who sued alongside 12 Democratic-led states, cheered the decision as a lifeline. They've argued that Trump's tariffs, which spiked costs on everything from electronics to groceries, threatened their survival by disrupting supply chains and raising prices. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield called the tariffs unlawful, reckless, and economically devastating, a sentiment echoed by Nevada's Aaron Ford, who hailed the ruling as a win for the rule of law and American pocketbooks. But the fight is far from over. The appeals court delayed its ruling until October 14, giving the Trump administration time to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, where the case is almost certain to land. Trump, never one to back down, took to Truth Social to slam the decision as a horrible, country-threatening move by a highly partisan court, warning it could literally destroy the United States. His administration, backed by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, insists the tariffs are vital for national security, curbing trade deficits, and bringing jobs back home. They've already collected $142 billion in duties by July, more than double the previous year's haul, and argue that scrapping the tariffs could unravel trade deals with nations like Japan and the European Union. Global markets reacted swiftly, with the U.S. dollar rallying and Wall Street futures climbing as investors bet on prolonged uncertainty. Asian policymakers, from Japan to South Korea, expressed cautious relief, while critics like Hong Kong's financial secretary suggested the ruling might force Trump to rethink his aggressive trade stance. Meanwhile, economists warn that if the tariffs stay in place, consumers could face higher prices, with some estimating a $4 trillion hit to U.S. deficits over a decade if the policy collapses. The legal battle hinges on deeper constitutional questions about presidential power. The court leaned on the major questions doctrine, a conservative legal principle that demands clear congressional approval for massive executive actions, to argue that Trump's tariffs overreached. Dissenting judges, however, warned that curbing the president's emergency powers could weaken U.S. leverage in global trade talks. As the case heads toward the Supreme Court, where Trump's allies hope for a favorable ruling, the outcome could redefine the balance of power between Congress and the White House, not to mention America's place in the global economy. For now, the tariffs remain in effect, and businesses must keep paying up. But if the Supreme Court upholds the lower courts, importers could see billions in refunds, a logistical nightmare for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Trump, undeterred, could pivot to other laws, like the Trade Expansion Act, to reimpose tariffs, but that would require slower, more scrutinized processes. As the world watches, the saga of Trump's trade war is poised to shape markets, politics, and America's economic future for years to come.